How's it going, everyone? It is 2PadStack here, and welcome back to another video. Today, we will be, rocking the all-new Reverse Retro. And secondly, we are going to be talking about my predictions for how the Western Conference is going to go, or the Western Division, sorry. So, with the revamped divisions, certain divisions are much harder, and certain divisions are much easier. So far, the Western Division. The Western Division has Arizona, St. Louis, Vegas, Anaheim, Colorado, San Jose, Minnesota, and LA in it. So, as you can see, there's going to be kind of a line between, I'd say, third and fourth of the top three and everyone else, basically. Then there's going to be Minnesota and Arizona fighting for that mid spot, and there's the Kings, Ducks, and Sharks on the bottom, but we'll see. But here are my selections. So first off, we're going to start off with Arizona. So for this, basically, I went through 4 categories with each team and how I decided where they're going to be. Their strength, their weakness, their questions, and basically who their star players are, or basically the players who are the most important to their team. And so for Arizona, obviously their strength is defense and goaltending. And so, Kemper and Raanta are incredible goaltenders and can keep that team in a game. We saw it against Colorado in the playoffs in that game where I don't know how many I think it was Kemper in net, or it doesn't matter because I'd say they're the same tier goalie, but he made like 40 saves. I'm only letting 2 goals. It was I watched that game. That was crazy. Colorado was in their zone the entire game and they won. So those 2 goalies can keep them in the game at any time. And I'd say that their defensive play is another strength. Although losing Stepan, who's a very good penalty killer, is going to be kind of a bit of a blow to them. But their biggest weakness is their offensive production. And that's the question I have. Why is their offense not clicking? Why is it that with Taylor Hall last season and Phil Kessel and Nick Schmaltz that they just can't get anything going? They are one of the lower scoring teams in the league, and it's perplexing because they have these good players like Phil Kessel and like Taylor Hall. Well, not Taylor Hall anymore, but they just don't score for the Coyotes. So that's the question. Why is the offense not clicking? But compared to the other teams in this division, and compared to the next team I'm going to go over, I'm going to say that Arizona just misses and they're going to be in number 5, although it is very close between Arizona and Minnesota. But speaking of Minnesota, let's move on. Minnesota, their strength is their defense. Their strength is their defense, their defensive players. I don't have their offense as really anything of a strength or a weakness. I think their offense is pretty middling, which could be fixed this season with the addition of Kaprizov. So I'm going to say that their biggest strength is that defense, though. Minnesota has a very solid defensive play. Although I wonder how the loss of at least the leadership of Eric Staal is going to be on that team. And Rossi too. Rossi's a flashy player, so we'll see how he does in Minnesota. But their big weakness for me, it's the goaltending. Because, Stalock and Talbot, I like Cam Talbot. I'm curious to know if Talbot can be a starter. And Stalock was good last season. I think these are 2 goalies who are solid 1Bs. But I'm curious to see how they're going to perform in such a tight schedule, especially with how it is right now, where there's so many back-to-backs, and we're going to be playing so many games in such a short period of time. I wonder how that's going to wear on them. You know what? Next up, we're going to do the 3 teams from California, and I'll explain myself with each one. So, at the bottom, I know it's going to seem like I'm biased, but I swear I'm not. Looking at these teams on paper, this is how I decided it out. I'm going to put the Sharks at number 8. So the biggest strength of the Sharks is that top 6. Kane, Couture, Meier, Hertl. Those guys are great players. And their play is really going to depend on how this team performs. And, the offense that they can get from that blue line with Carlson and from Burns. I know Burns had kind of a down year last year, but he can probably bounce back. That's what's really going to keep them in. Their offense is good. The problem is that their bottom 6 and their goaltending really isn't that deep, where their goaltending is Martin Jones and Devin Dubnyk. Just get ready for that one, Sharks fans. Can't wait for those 890 save percentages. And playing so many games in a short period of time, I say that you need to have 2 good goalies. You need to have 2 good goalies to really succeed this season. And there are some teams that really only have 1 good goalie. Like, for example, Winnipeg. Winnipeg has Hellebuck and then Brossoit. But, Brossoit is an okay backup. But I think you need at least a 1B. I think you're really going to need a second goaltender to help your main goalie, carry the workload. So, I think that's the Sharks' biggest weakness, their goaltending, and it has been. But the big question is, will that team bounce back? Because we know that they can be a really good team. It really wasn't that long ago that they were in the Western Conference Finals. Now, I know that there was a lot of controversy around that, but they still made the Western Conference Finals. And before that, it was the second round, and then it was, I think it was the Conference Finals again, and then it was the Cup Final. So the Sharks have been a good team for the last 5 years. It's just this past season they really didn't do well. And the problem is that I don't see a lot of prospects for the Sharks to really keep them going for much longer. So I think the Sharks have some tough years ahead, but you can't keep that team down for long. They've missed the playoffs less than 10 times in their entire existence. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the Sharks do this season. Number 7, I have Anaheim. So Anaheim's biggest strength, I gotta say, it's their defense. And I guess their goaltending. But Ryan Miller is kind of old, so we'll see how that goes. But their defense has always been solid, especially with the addition of Shattenkirk. That defense is going to be really, really solid this season. And I think that Gibson is going to stand on his head like he always does. I think because the Ducks haven't been great the past couple of years, that Gibson is kind of starting to become underrated. Gibson is still a very, very, very good goaltender, and in the right team, he can be a Vezina contender. So, Gibson, he can really carry that team, and that defense can really carry that team. Now, the problem that I see with it is their forward depth. Now, I know that they have a lot of leadership, and like Getzlaf and Henrique, but, that team, they really need some prospects. They really need some of those prospects like Steele and like Jones to really come in and break out this year. They really need that if they're going to be even contending for a playoff spot. But yeah, I think the Ducks are solid at number 7, unless Steele and Jones have huge breakout seasons and each score 40, 50 points. We'll see. And then number 6, we're going to put LA. Now, LA could easily swap with Anaheim, but here's the thing. Their biggest strength is their youth. The Kings have a solid amount of prospects. This season, they have Vilardi, they have Turcotte, they have Peterson, and they have Byfield. Now, these are questions for how are these rookies going to do? Now, I know Vilardi got into some games last season, and so did Peterson, but how are they going to do in a full schedule? Now, I think the Kings, with Peterson and Quick, I think Quick has kind of become underrated. I know he's much older, but I think that it's kind of been overstated how much he's regressed. I think that Quick can still be a very, very, very solid goalie, but that the contract is his big problem. And then yesterday they just got at Tennessee. So the Kings are going to be pretty good on offense. And remember, they still have Kopitar and Doughty. And I know Doughty wasn't competing really for the Norris last season, but he's still a very good defenseman, and he can probably bounce back this season. So, we will see how they do. I think the Kings' biggest weakness is their lack of depth, though, especially defensively. But if the rookies can come in and they can make their impact, especially Byfield, Turcotte, they will be in a very good position and might even be contending for a playoff spot. All right, so the top three. At number 3, it's hard to look, but I gotta say St. Louis. St. Louis's strength right now is their offense. That offense is really, really good. They have O'Reilly, they have Schenn, they have Schwartz, Perron, and then they just added Mike Hoffman. Mike Hoffman, if he was on their team last season, would have been their second highest point producer. So that offense is going to be pretty high flying this season. Now, I know that they don't have Tarasenko, but remember, they didn't have Tarasenko for most of last season either. So the Blues can really get some work done. My question, they are a tough team to gauge where their weakness is. I think the Blues are really, really solidly built. And, their worst is basically middling. Now, I guess you could say their goaltending could be their weakness with how they only have Binnington and a rookie coming up. It's going to be interesting to see how that one works. But I think that the Blues are good enough, and they added Torrey Krug. I know Torrey Krug is not Alex Pietrangelo, but he's still a decent number 1 power play guy. And you still have Colton Parayko. So, and if Justin Faulk can have a bounce back, then hey, the Blues could compete again. And then number 2, I have these guys, the Golden Knights. The Golden Knights are a very strong team where they're strong. They're wingers, they're top 4, and they have 2 great goalies. I know it can be contested if Fleury's a good goalie still, but hey, I still see him as a good goalie. Their biggest weakness is their center depth. Now, that's where the question is: how will Cody Glass do as the number 2 center, which is where I see him as at this point in the season. But if Glass can come in and he can really break out this year as that second line center between Marshy and Smith, then they'll be really solid and really hard to beat. They still have Stone, Pacioretty, Carlson, and then Smith and Marchessault as that top line. And their defense, their top 4 is solid. They have Pietrangelo and Theodore, and then they have Martinez. So that top 4 is still really, really good. And then, Leonard and Fleury can carry that weight. We saw it at the end of last season and even during the playoffs somewhat. I know Fleury didn't have a lot of playing time in the playoffs, but depending on how they play, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'll put the Golden Knights at number 2 in the division, which means at number 1 will be the Colorado Avalanche. The Colorado Avalanche, as someone who's, their team is in the same division, the Colorado Avalanche are a terrifying opponent. For Colorado, what's their weakness? Goaltending, I guess, is their weakest point. I mean, I like Grubauer and Francouz, but I don't see either of them as elite, but they're still good. They're still good, solid goalies. And their strength, they are so deep at the forward position. They're so deep defensively, especially with the addition of Devon Toews. This is Colorado, I think, is a lock for number 1 in the division, but we'll see. That top line is absolutely insane with Rantanen, McKinnon, and Landeskog. And then you add Brandon Saad to that forward group, and you have Nazem Kadri as your number 2 center. They're kind of a scary team. And then on defense, you have Cale Makar, Ryan Graves, Gerard, and now you add Devon Taves to that. Just Colorado's going to be scary. They're going to be high flying, and if in the playoffs MacKinnon can do what he did this past playoffs, like wasn't MacKinnon still leading the playoffs in scoring during the in the Cup final? Like he had like 20 something points. Like MacKinnon was crazy in the playoffs. And I think that Colorado really just got sidelined by injury. If they can stay healthier during the playoffs, and I think they're even stronger than they were last year, which is ungodly to think about. And you got to win it now. You have to win the Cup in the next few years while MacKinnon is still making that $6 million. MacKinnon's contract is probably the best contract in the NHL. It's probably the best contract in the entire league to get, debatedly the best player in the game on that contract. I still think it's McDavid, but hey, I've seen some people debate MacKinnon, and it's kind of hard to debate him. So yeah, that's my list for who's going to be 1 through 8 in this division. Come back next time. I will probably be doing the Canadian division or the Northern division. And then after that, we'll see. I'm going to do all the divisions, so don't worry. And yeah. So that's it for today, guys. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. If you're here, you probably enjoyed the video. I wouldn't be watching 17-something minutes in without liking it. But yeah. So anyways, guys, I will see you next time. Bye.